NRA TV with Bill Whittle.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Hot Mike Show. I'm Bill Whittle, live from Los Angeles, and unfortunately, Hot Mike had a little pain in his right side, and he's driving around the streets of Beverly Hills trying to find somebody who can remove his thesaurus. He's a little tough on comprehension sometimes. We expect to have him back tomorrow, though. Well, the world is on fire, obviously, and the end of civilization has come. Dogs and cats raining from the skies, lions and lambs lying down together. The end of the republic is here because, according to the left, the harbinger of the apocalypse is the fact that Chris Rock is running for the Senate in Michigan. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I think I keep saying Chris Rock, Kid Rock. I can get him right. Kid Rock is running for Senate in Michigan, and I think really, there's an awful lot to talk about in regard to this. But I think the thing I'd like most about the idea is for some sort of just real arcane kind of a committee meeting, and just out in the middle of nowhere, and I'd like to have somebody say the chair recognizes the senator from Michigan, and then he sits there and he goes, "My name is Kid Rock." That's the way you start a Senate meeting. You get a little spark in there. So aside from the fact that Kid Rock, who's pretty conservative, is running for Senate, people are having a conniption fit about the entire idea of this. This, of course, following on the election of Donald Trump, is to the left. This is simply the end days of the sort of uncouth demise of America. So there's a lot of things to say about this. I think probably most people, when they're confronted with the idea of Kid Rock, certainly those on the left, would start with, well, Kid Rock, what are his qualifications? What possibly qualifies Kid Rock to be a Senate candidate? That's a really good question. And when you hear that criticism coming at you from Democrats, you have to ask yourself, well, you're right, you make a great point. What is, how is Kid Rock qualified? What are his credentials? This from a political party that elected a Senator Al Franken, senator from Minnesota, I suspect it was, who, by the way, pretty much convincingly stole his election. But Al Franken has been he's one of the lions of the Senate for the left. Now, Al Franken was a washed-up comedian who did a couple of seasons on Saturday Night Live back shortly after it was funny. And he's been there for, I don't know, 7 years now, something like that, maybe earlier, maybe 2008. He's been there for a while. The liberal firebrand today in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, was ranting and raving about Obamacare. Chuck Schumer's not as bright as Hot Mike, to be honest with you, really. So I'm not sure about that. And then you get people like Nancy Pelosi, who basically marry into millions of dollars and then proclaim themselves to be champions of the republic. But the basic thing is the idea that you might be disqualified for the Senate because maybe you don't have sufficient IQ or sufficient political background. In response to that, I would simply say this. Here's a quick clip from a hearing that occurred in March 25th of 2010, when a member of the House of Representatives of the United States of America was quizzing an admiral upon the Navy's idea to put another 8,000 troops on the island of Guam. Please behold the magnificence of Representative Hank Johnson.
To your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
Very small island, and about 24 miles, if I recall, long. So 24 miles long, about 7 miles wide at the least widest place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the island. And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that.
I should know that admiral's name because I have to tell you, in the extremely proud and honorable annals of the U.S. Navy, I'm not sure I've ever seen that kind of control before. For that admiral to not burst out laughing there, I think the man should be given some sort of extremely impressive decoration. Yeah, we don't want the island of Guam to tip over. So I don't think we're really dealing with an issue of what is your minimum IQ here. I think the entire issue of Kid Rock running for Senate is a very appropriate thing for us to discuss. Just before we bring in our guests, there's one more thing I'd like to say about this whole issue, just to kind of broaden out the canvas a little bit. I'd like to show you a picture of one of the founders. He may be the most famous man you've never heard of. His name's Gouverneur Morris. There he is. And who is this guy, you may want to ask yourself? Well, Gouverneur Morris was in charge of the Committee on Style, and basically that served a much more important function than you may think. Essentially what happened during the framing of the Constitution was a bunch of very smart people got in a room and slowly and deliberately hammered out exactly how the government was going to function, how it was going to work, what was going to happen, what was the actual owner's manual of this government going to look like. And when they figured out the rules, they handed it over to the Committee of Style led by Gouverneur Morris, and it was his job to make sure that the Constitution was written in a language that everyone could understand. If you could read English, you could understand this government. That is a remarkably difficult task. Any idiot can make things complex. It takes a genius to make things simple. Gouverneur Morris was the man who made the Constitution understandable and readable. In fact, I'm pretty sure that these actual words are his because he had a little room left over. 4,400 words for the Constitution in total, by the way, is considerably less than the owner's manual for a Toyota Camry. Morris also wrote, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." That came from that pen and that mind. So the entire principle is really at stake here, and let's get down into the weeds with that. So let's bring on our guest, who's somebody I've met before, but he's been a guest here before. Jeff Kruer. He's a political analyst, and he's a host of Ringside Politics. Jeff, good to have you with us today.
Hey, thanks, Bill.
Jeff, there are, in fact, legal requirements to be a senator, and they are in Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution. 3 qualifications for senators. 1, they must be at least 30 years old. I'm pretty sure Kid Rock qualifies there. 2, they must have been citizens of the United States for at least the past 9 years. And 3, they must be inhabitants of the state they seek to represent. I think Chris Rock is qualified to be Senator of the United States from the great state of Michigan. What do you think?
I love the idea, Bill. I mean, I think Kid Rock is a great entertainer. I mean, I think he's been a genius in marketing himself. He's someone who's been interested in politics. He goes against the grain. I like anybody in the world of entertainment that goes against the sort of groupthink that you see among all these stars. And it takes a lot of courage to sort of stand out on your own and say, hey, I'm going to be a conservative. I'm for the Second Amendment. I'm for building up our military. He's a real patriot, I think, and he's someone that I think speaks for Michigan. He loves Michigan. He's grown up there. Obviously, you can see it from his concerts. He's a proud native son. And I hate to tell the Democrats, but I think we're going to be looking at Senator Kid Rock. I mean, I think he's going to win. I really do.
You know, Jeff, you make a really interesting point, because the entire case I was going to make, and I'm about to make, and I think is essentially the case, is that representation of the people means of the people. That's what we want. We don't want professionals. I'll come back to that in a second. But you raise a very interesting point there in your answer, and that is, you think that the first quality that emerged regarding Kid Rock was his willingness to be unpopular in a business that is so unbelievably heavily progressive, that he's willing to stand up for his principles and take the abuse that comes with being a conservative in show business. That's a profound actual insight that does require a certain amount of courage and commitment to principles, doesn't it?
Well, I think it does. You see so few, Bill. I mean, it really is the rare occasion when you have a conservative singer, actor step forward. And Kid Rock has not been bashful. He's been doing it for years. He's someone who's had a long career. So he's got not only talent, but he really has the ability, I think, to connect with fans of different age groups. And I think that's going to help him in a political campaign. He's got, I think, a lot of passion and energy. And I think he's right on the issues that I've seen him communicate ideas. I think he's pretty much on target. And I think he can represent the working class, the people that are so often overlooked, the blue collar workers, the folks out there that are struggling. I mean, I think they'll really identify with someone like Kid Rock. He sort of has this blue collar appeal to him. And I think he's going to be an interesting candidate to watch. I really hope, Bill, that this is going to happen.
You know, that constituency that you mentioned, basically working class people, is what got us President Donald Trump. And there's an awful lot of very important consequences of that demographic, Jeff. And it's not just that you pick up extra votes, because being the champion of the working man against these large forces of corporations, that's not just the Democratic core constituency, that's their reason for existence. It's the entire Democratic Party. The only reason there is a Democratic Party is, at least if you look at the history of the Democratic Party, is that we stand for the little guy against the big guy. I don't particularly buy the whole premise, but nevertheless, that's what they're selling. For them to lose working class Americans to Donald Trump doesn't just mean that Democrats have a problem in terms of elections now. They've got a problem in terms of identity as well.
No doubt about it. And you identified it. That is the reason Donald Trump won. I mean, he took his traditional Republican base, expanded it into areas where Republican candidates haven't been competitive since Ronald Reagan, and really hit a home run and defied all the experts. And it was because of this appeal to the working class. And you're right, Democrats have turned their backs on these folks for decades. Democrats don't care about these people. These are struggling people that are having a hard time when you have unlimited illegal immigration coming in, when you have horrible trade deals. And those are some of the issues Donald Trump really talked about. And that's the only reason he's president today, is because he went against the grain and identified those issues, connected with that base that nobody said he could get, and he brought it home. And boy, I'm thankful every day, Bill, that Donald Trump is our president.
Yeah, me too, especially considering the alternative. And that's exactly right. Donald Trump's campaign was pretty simple. Make America great again. If you're a working class person, that means maybe there's going to be some effort to hang on to your job. Maybe there's going to be some effort to recognize your own needs and struggles. And the left now, for generations, really, has been ignoring, as you say, working class Americans and courting not only the billionaires in Silicon Valley, but also the beautiful, beautiful millionaires in the Hollywood Hills. And I think working people feel abandoned, and I think Kid Rock's got a pretty good chance. If you can stay with us, we'll be right back. Jeff will talk about some of the reasons why the left is so upset about all this. This is the Hot Mic Show on NRA TV, and we'll be right back.
I'm Coleon Noir, and inside this little black box is a new NRA TV app. With it, you can stay up to date with all of your Second Amendment news and NRA lifestyle programming on your HD TV. So download it now. Don't worry, I'll wait.
And we're back with Hot Mike from Los Angeles, speaking about the intended Senate run of Kid Rock to be senator from the great state of Michigan. And we've got our friend Jeff Kruer is on the line with us here, talking about this candidacy and some of the sort of really remarkable aspects about what this candidacy really brings to America, especially today in the wake of the election of Donald Trump. Jeff, I got into an argument a little while ago. Maybe it wasn't a little while ago, might have been a couple of years now. I was talking to somebody, and we were arguing about Bush and Obama, and this guy said, well, at least Obama's smarter than George Bush. And I said, really? You know, before he became president, George Bush was a supersonic fighter pilot. Barack Obama filled out forms. He handed out forms to people. George Bush was flying supersonic aircraft and delivering weapons. If I had a choice of which one I think would be easier to do, I think that filling out the forms would be easier. But the reason I bring this up is because the left has always conflated intelligence with rhetorical skill and things like fashion sense and polish, but it ain't necessarily so.
Well, Bill, look at what they did to Ronald Reagan. He's someone who I think had incredible rhetorical skill, someone who I think was very smart, yet they always considered him to be a dunce. And I think one of the reasons was he was a strong conservative. And look at how they inflate people like Al Gore, who I think is truly a dunce, yet they claim he's some sort of a genius. And I think you see it with Barack Obama. You see it with Donald Trump. Somehow Donald Trump is an idiot, according to the left. Yet he's a graduate of Wharton. He built a $10 billion business. He won against all the experts who said he couldn't do it. So who's really the genius and who's really the idiot? And I think Kid Rock is someone who's very smart and someone who's anybody that can have a successful career spanning as long as he has, and to do it with such a unique style, and to also go against the grain and articulate views that others can't articulate, and then to see an opportunity here to possibly run for the Senate. I think all of that takes a lot of smarts. And listen, I look forward to him being in a body right now that I don't have much respect for, with people like Susan Collins, and Lindsey Graham, and all these other folks. I think Kid Rock is going to elevate the Senate big time.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Jeff. And this is the part where progressives' heads just come off. The smoke starts curling out of their ears. That Kid Rock was going to elevate the Senate. How could such a thing be possible? Look at the man. He looks. Well, for God's sakes, he looks like a working man. I mean, seriously, how can we possibly have somebody like that in the Senate? You know why I think Kid Rock is would be a good senator, and why I think he's got a good chance to win? He's up on stage there, so he's got appeal, he's got charisma, he's got working class charisma, but he's wearing a T-shirt in one of those clips we saw that said Motor City, and Motor City, Detroit, is the poster child for the Democratic Party's abandonment of working people as they veered ever further to the left and courted more and more of these micro identity groups, and more millionaires and more billionaires in Silicon Valley. They got further and further away from it. Detroit has been run by Democratic mayors and councilmen for something like 60 years uninterrupted. And there's a very popular meme going around there, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a picture with a kind of a caption on it. And it shows a picture of Detroit and Hiroshima side by side in 1945. And in 1945, Detroit is the envy of the world. It looks like Metropolis. It's this absolutely booming, thriving city filled with industry and so on. And Hiroshima is simply a couple of brick walls standing. It's just immediately after the bomb. And then right below those two pictures are two pictures of Detroit today. And now it's Hiroshima that's the thriving, teeming metropolis where people are successful and everything's glistening and new. And it's Detroit that looks like it's been hit by an atomic bomb. It hasn't been hit by an atomic bomb. It's been hit by something much more destructive than that. It's been hit by democratic policies. And I think Kid Rock's going to be able to make that connection.
I think so too. And it's not just Detroit, Bill. Look at every urban area in the country. 99.9% of them are run by liberal Democrats. And look at all the problems. They're very commonplace. You know, the blight, the drugs, the poverty, the crime, the bad infrastructure, of course, the bad job opportunities. We have it here in Louisiana, in New Orleans. Democrats have run New Orleans since Reconstruction. We haven't had a conservative Republican ever. And many of these other big cities the same way. So Kid Rock maybe can connect to some of the voters who traditionally vote Democrat due to his music background, due to his appeal, and maybe be a very dynamic candidate that the Democrats going to have a hard time with. But I'm hoping that other candidates can also make that appeal to these folks in the urban areas that, listen, we've been voting Democrat for decades. It's not working. The problems are getting worse. Let's try something new.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, if somebody's going to reach America's inner cities, and these are the places that really pay the price for this Democratic neglect, it's going to be somebody like Kid Rock with that kind of street cred, and not somebody like Mitt Romney. It's going to be somebody who can basically make the exact same case that you've made. These are murder pits. You've been utterly abandoned on this, and I think he's got a real good chance to make that case. Here's the final question for you, for all of us, I think, today, Jeff. And the question really comes down to something pretty simple, and this is, I think, a fundamental divide between conservatives and progressives. The question is this: can the people govern themselves, yes or no? Needless to say, the Democrats would be leaping on, oh, no, we love democracy. Well, it doesn't seem that you do. The Democratic candidates for presidents have almost all been lawyers, as opposed to the conservative candidates, which have usually been businessmen of some kind or another. And I think the idea that a regular Joe, just like a Joe the plumber, a regular guy, could go to Washington as a representative of the state or as a senator from that state, I think it fills the progressives with a sense of embarrassment and loathing and deep concern, because it violates their elitist privilege. How can you possibly be a senator from Michigan if you don't have a Harvard Law degree like I do?
And how can you possibly be a senator if you haven't been in the political system for years, if you haven't been a lobbyist or a politician or a lawyer or living off the government? And that's the, I think, great appeal of someone like a Donald Trump, someone like a Kid Rock, coming in from outside the political spectrum and bringing some fresh insight into all of these problems. And I think, Bill, that's what the founders wanted. They wanted people that would go in there, serve, not make it a career, not make it something where they would stay for decades, and then go back home and then have some fresh people get in there with some different perspectives, new energy. And that's why hopefully I'm excited about some of these new type of candidates like Kid Rock, who are not professional politicians.
You mentioned this in passing earlier, Jeff. You mentioned your disappointment in the current Senate, to say the least, with the Obamacare repeal. You know, we expect that Democrats are going to be for big government, and anybody who was watching the scorecard saw that Obama's elected in 2008, a huge Democratic landslide all across the board. The Democrats in 2008 had the presidency, the House, and the Senate. They used these levers of power to ram Obamacare down the throat of the nation with all this, legerdemain and all these little tricks deemed to have passed and all the rest of it. And then the very next election, in 2010, the American people give the House back to the Republicans. What's his name? Jim. The Raging Cajun. The political commentator.
James Carville.
Garville. Sorry, yeah. James Carville said after Obama was elected in 2008 that this is the beginning of 40 years of uninterrupted Democratic rule, and he was only off by 38 years. Shortly after that, we get the Senate in 2014. We promised to repeal Obamacare. Didn't happen. And they've been saying, well, all we need is the president to sign the bill. Well, now we have a president to sign the bill, and now Republicans are chickening out. And this is what happens, I think, when you have a professional political class who look at elective office as if it's the last helicopter out of Saigon, and who will do anything to maintain their position. And whatever principles you may have are just right out the window. I think that was the appeal of Donald Trump. People got the impression that he didn't need the job. And I get that same kind of vibe off of Kid Rock.
Yeah, I do too. And the thing about these professional politicians that I hate, they're insulated from the grassroots, their constituents, the people that they serve, and they're listening to the lobbyists and the special interests. So they don't understand the anger of their constituents, of the people. Donald Trump did all these rallies. He connected with people. I think Kid Rock has that same kind of connection. And I think that's what we need. We need people that are going to be listening to the voters, to the people that are actually out there working hard, not the elitists and the insiders. And if Republicans had been listening to the voters in their party, this would have happened the day Donald Trump got inaugurated. But it's taken now 6 months and 4 days finally for this thing to get passed. And finally, we're going to go forward with something. I'm hoping and praying that they deliver, because if not, there's going to be a big time backlash, I think, against the Republican Party.
Yeah, and if they don't deliver, then Kid Rock is going to be the most ordinary run-of-the-mill candidate for office in the America to come from the Republican side. That's absolutely for sure. Jeff, thanks very much for joining us here today. Jeff Kruer is a political analyst and he's host of Ringside Politics. It's been a pleasure talking with you, buddy, and we look to have you back again real soon.
Thank you, Bill.
The issue, ladies and gentlemen, is very simple. Do the people have the ability to govern themselves, yes or no? The founders never intended that there would be a political class. The founders' idea was that regular people would come to Washington. They'd do 2 years or 4 years or whatever, 6 years, and go home. And it's time for a lot of these people to go home. I know Kid Rock looks unorthodox. I like that. I suspect his chances are much better than I thought they were at the beginning of this segment. We're going to find out. We'll be back tomorrow with the Hot Mic Show here from Los Angeles. I'm Bill Whittle right here on NRA TV.